Our Parshas Chaye Sara, often falls out Shabbos Mevorchin Chodesh Kislev. And of course, in our Parsha, we learn of the miracle of the Shabbos candles of Sara, which that miracle was rekindled with the entrance of Rivka into Sarah's tent, the miracle of the oil, the Shabbos candles that burned from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. In that context, the Rabbi discusses in our Sicha also the miracle of Hanukkah. And that the miracle of Hanukkah can be understood on three different levels. The oil, the miracle of the oil could be understood quantitatively, that there was more oil each time, even though we burned the oil at night, there was more oil the next day to be burnt again. So therefore the miracle was in the quantity of oil, and that miracle was noticeable at the beginning of the day, at the beginning of the performance of the mitzvah in the afternoon when there was more oil in the bowl. There's a second way of understanding the Rabbi talks about the quality, that the oil was qualitatively greater. What does that mean? That means there's two different ways of understanding this, that the oil that lasted for 8 days, either they put an eighth of the oil in every night and it burned for a full night. It was a qualitatively miraculous oil that burned longer, or they filled up the bowl the first night and each night it only burned an eighth because the oil was of such high quality. So there too also the miracle is noticeable at the end of the fact that even though it burned all night, there was not all of it burnt. There's a third way the Rebbe explains it, which is really quite astounding, that the oil was filled up the first night. That oil burned for the whole night, and yet it wasn't consumed. Exactly the amount of oil was in the bowl at the end of the night as the beginning of the night. And that's a revelation of the highest order, to the extent that we call it nimna nimnois, the paradox of paradoxes, that HaKadosh Baruch is beyond all limitation, to such an extent that he can exist simultaneously in a state of limitation and beyond limitation. Such that the oil, within the context of limited reality, burnt, like oil naturally burns, and yet, in an oifen of beyond limitation, the oil wasn't consumed, it was still there. Similar to the famous idea of the Aron Eina Mina Mida, that even though the Aron took up space in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, in the Holy of Holies, if you were to measure from side to side, the Aron didn't take up space. It had dimensions, 1.5 amma by 1.5 amma, and it was 2.5 ammas long, but didn't take up space. So on one level it was part of space, on the other level it was beyond space. Nimna nimnois, the paradox of paradoxes. The Rebbe explains those three different levels of understanding the mitzvah in terms of our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. There's a fourth level, and that's the level of relating to a Kadosh Baruch Hu pitam v'das, the natural, rational level of explaining our reality such that it's reasonable to serve the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And certainly, when godliness is revealed, that's a very simple and reasonable way to serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu. But when times are such that it might be that there's a certain level of concealment, it might take a little more energy to fight through that concealment to connect to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And those are the three levels of Avodah that the Rebbe calls miraculous. They're beyond Tam Vadas, beyond the rationale, the rational way of connecting to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that is the idea of Kabbalah Soul and Mesiras Nefesh, commitment and self-sacrifice. That can either be something that is expressed once a day and somehow imbues the rest of the day with its power, or there's a higher level. The Rebbe talks about the fact that appreciation of godliness can imbue every single moment of our lives. Just like in the third explanation of the Hanukkah candles, the miracle happened every single moment. Because every single moment of the lighting of the candles and the burning of the candles, the miracle of burning and not being consumed was expressing itself. That level of connection to a Kadosh Baruch Hu can be expressed in a person's day-to-day service. That every moment of the day, not just when they say Shema Yisrael in the morning and somehow imbue their whole day with a reality of Mesiras Nefesh and Kabbalah Soul, holiness, but rather every single moment can be imbued with that direct understanding and appreciation of Elokus, that level of connection that corresponds to the third level of Hanukkah. That's the level of devotion that the Rebbe constantly asks from us. The thread that runs through so much of the Rebbe's Torah, the talks of the Rebbe, the letters of the Rebbe, is that a Jew has a natural ability to connect and relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yes, there's an aspect of our relationship that's a war. But as so many of the Maimarim of the month of Kislev, when we celebrate Tes Kislev, Yud Tes Kislev, the Maimarim Pada B'Sholem, that our Pedia, our redemption from the Milchoma, from the battle of this world, is B'Sholem. And how is it B'Sholem? When we connect to who we really are, then Elokus permeates every aspect of our life. And that produces a calm in our Avodah. That our Avodah isn't this battle where we're constantly at war with the world around us. There is an aspect of the world that is indeed a desert. And yet our Rebbe said one mimer, more than any other mimer, over 40 times. The Rebbe said a mimer called Basi Lagani. I've come to my garden. What's the garden? This world. This world can be a desert, but if I look at it with the proper eyes, I see it's a garden. It's the place that can be turned into that which blooms. And what is it that blooms? Godly revelation, our Avodah, our service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the place for that to happen. And that doesn't have to be a battle. Because if I'm constantly aware of who I really am and who we as the Jewish people truly are, then it can be done calmly and naturally. That doesn't mean that there won't be things that require a tremendous amount of effort. It might be taking care of a garden demands a tremendous amount of effort. It's not a battle against the ground. It's using the world so the world will grow beautiful things. What are those beautiful things? The revelation of the Eibishter. So in this week's Sikha, we see so clearly that third level of the miracle of it all, that level where it permeates every moment of our being. Why is that something possible for every single one of us? Because of the essential nature of every single one of us. Essentially, every one of us is completely and totally, essentially connected to God. That's our true reality. When we tap into that part of us, even simply by remembering that that part of us exists, it turns the battle into something calm. And it's with that calm that we march forward, understanding that victory will be ours. Ultimately, we'll see the revelation of Mashiach. It should happen very speedily in our days.